Welcome to the Men on Purpose podcast, featuring dynamic conversations with emerging and established visionary men on purpose. Thanks for joining us today as we celebrate the men on purpose who are committed, creative, courageous changemakers, living their best, most fulfilling life possible. Now, here's the host of Men on Purpose, Ian Lobas.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Men on Purpose podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about confidence, and we've got an expert on the subject, and I'm really excited. Here's some of the things we're going to talk about before I tell you about the guest. How to be less nice and be more real. We're going to talk about the surprising benefits of being less nice, and whatever's going through your head right now, it's not what you're thinking. How to transform self-criticism and doubt into unstoppable confidence. How to eliminate social anxiety and self-doubt. How to end imposter syndrome. And how to confidently say no without fear or guilt. Those sound really simple, but they are deep. And most of you listening, because I've had so many people reach out. And one of the biggest patterns or the biggest things that I'm seeing is from DMs from our episodes or people that come through our coaching business or our front runner live events is they're struggling with confidence. They're struggling with imposter syndrome. Then they're struggling with knowing what to do and what the right thing is and not people pleasing, but to own who they are and really find out their identity. So today I've got Dr. Aziz Gazipura on the program, and he is a clinical psychologist and one of the world's leading authorities on confidence. He teaches people how to rapidly learn confidence so they can eliminate social anxiety, eliminate self-doubt, master conversations, accelerate in their careers, their marriages, their relationships, and create deeply fulfilling relationships, which, if you don't have that, this is crucial, right? You may have a relationship, but if it's not deeply fulfilling in every aspect, then this is going to be a perfect one for you. So after struggling with crippling shyness and social anxiety for over a decade, Dr. Aziz became determined to find a way to get his freedom. Through thousands of hours of his own training and counseling and reading and group work and coaching, he's truly mastered what it takes to transform fear and self-doubt into permanent self-worth and confidence. Sounds awesome. And you're going to have those answers today. So let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Aziz. He completed his doctoral training at Stanford and Palo Alto universities, and he's the founder of the Center for Social Confidence. He's known for his dynamic speaking, for his humor, for his disarming vulnerability. And he's got a really cool way, an inspiring way of storytelling. He's got a huge online following with his podcast and his YouTube videos. And he's the author of 4 books, best-selling books, including his most popular one, which is called Not Nice. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Couple housekeeping tips. Remember, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you click that subscribe button. And if you can be so kind to rate us and give us a 5-star review, that would be much, much appreciated. It's helped this podcast grow to top 1% in the world, and we have you to thank for that. Remember, as always, if you want to reach out to me, find out anything about the products and services we offer through our coaching and consulting business, you can hit us up on ianlobas.com or menonpurposepodcast.com for literally anything you want to know, including our front runner event, which is our live 4-day, very intense mastermind, very powerful stuff. We're going to be running one of those in July of this year. Hit the website up for more details, or just DM me and I'll get you a link for more information. Something really big too. We have a free Facebook community now. We've got a ton of value, a ton of stuff in there for you to, literally free resources for you to use, just to kind of give you a little bit more depth than the podcast gives you, which is a lot of depth, but want to go even further. So that is the Men on Purpose community, not to be confused with the Men on Purpose podcast community, which is just for this podcast. But the Men on Purpose community is for all things Men on Purpose. So that's it. That's housekeeping. Appreciate you guys for listening, for making this thing what it is today. We're going to keep it up. As you know, we have to constantly elevate, educate, enrich, empower, and evolve the information, our education, everything that we're doing so that we can live that life that we truly dream about. So without further ado, here's Dr. Aziz. All right, Dr. Aziz, let's do this. First and foremost, before we get into confidence and all the stuff that you're an expert at, I want people, in your bio, I read that it was like debilitating insecurity, lack of confidence. So for those that are listening who think that there's maybe something special about you or me in that we found our confidence, like I want you to dispel that, because you put a lot of work into this. But who were you and why were you like that, before you became who you are today? Like, what was the cause?
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's important to highlight because people can tend to think someone either has confidence or they don't, as if it's some sort of genetic trait like the color of your eyes.
Right.
And it is not. It's much more like a muscle, right? If someone is muscular or athletic, it's like you could say, oh, they got lucky with their genes. It's like, no, they've been consistently living a certain way for years. So I think that's important to really highlight so we can liberate ourselves no
Yeah.
matter where we're starting from. And the question would be like, what would cause someone to become obsessed with studying confidence for the last almost 2 decades now? And it would be coming from an intense amount of pain.
Yeah.
So the wound that then turns into a gift, right? But for me when I was younger, it was there's no gift, it was all wound.
Yeah.
And I experienced increasing levels of insecurity. It started small, like a snowball that turns into an avalanche.
Yeah.
And it can be very subtle. It can be like this subtle creep without noticing it. And it just started with, I think, a baseline assumption of I'm different, I'm not okay, I'm a little less than. And we start to formulate an identity. It starts as like a hypothesis. So I'm in middle school, and my hypothesis is I don't think I'm as attractive as those other people. I don't think I'm that desirable. I don't think I'm that worthy.
Hmm.
And then once we start to have that as our hypothesis, we then look for evidence. And so I did. And I started to develop an identity of I'm less than, I'm different, I'm undesirable, I'm ugly, I can't speak up in groups, like all this stuff. So then by the time I got to maybe about 15, it was pretty locked into my identity.
Yeah.
And then I just carried that with me to new environments, and we say, oh, it's going to be different when I get to a different environment, different
Dude.
city, different place. And it's not. It's wherever you go, there you are. And so I brought
Totally.
me, and it was kind of like a splash of water in the face or something. I think I had this fantasy I'm going to get to college and it's going to be easy, and I got to college and I was even more anxious
Yeah.
because I'm away from home and it's a big environment and I'm anonymous, and and for me at that time, it probably is any common challenge for young men is like, I want to date, I want to connect, I want to meet women, and I was utterly terrified. And so my life just sustained this kind of small nature of school, work, video games, and like one or two close male friends.
Yep.
And other, cannabis, porn, alcohol, just whatever I could do to just kind of, have comfort and sustain that life. And then at some point, though, fortunately, I reached a threshold of pain when I was 21. I was like, if I don't do something now, the rest of this course of my life is dismal.
Dude, yeah.
And so, there was some calling from the future, some hunger to change, and I heeded the call. So I started to take just a whole different course in my life. And the beautiful thing is when we do that, it starts with like me. How am I going to get a girlfriend? How am I going to get this? How am I going to get what I want? And then it turns into like, wait a minute, how do I share this with others? And that leads to, I'm sure, what you're doing here with your podcast.
Yep.
But how do we contribute? And I think that's a beautiful thing where now all of a sudden all the pain and the wound turns into this like spring that's constantly putting forth an endless desire that I'm going to have for the rest of my life to contribute to as many people as I can to experience that same transformation.
So how did you, I have so many questions to ask you just from what you said. I felt that, man. Like I felt, one of the reasons why I felt like that I've discovered later on in life is because no fault of my parents, but they didn't teach me at a high enough level how to understand my feelings and emotions inside. And so the thoughts that led to the feelings, I didn't understand. So all of them were like dire. And I remember talking to a psychologist one time when I was younger. And I said, I wake up every morning feeling like I open my eyes and someone's pointing a gun at my head. I feel dread. I feel like a bear is chasing me and he's about to get me. And they compartmentalized it by saying, well, that you don't have to go to that extreme. They started helping me back off these, like, okay, you're anxious because you're just only focusing on what might happen, what could happen, what, you know, whatever. And like, what was it that actually shifted you? I mean, 21, like, people have to realize that with self-confidence, you are building a habit that keeps solidifying and keeps giving evidence. You're looking for evidence all the time to appropriate your theory, which, by the way, is a crazy theory because it doesn't have any evidence to really back it up. You might have one girl that rejected you or one guy that rejected you, or you might have a teacher that called on you and you didn't know the answer. But that right there, those moments, the snowball starts to roll. And every time you give it and feed it more, you know, quote unquote evidence that's mainly false, it just perpetuates. And then you turn into a 21-year-old that's like got I call them escape pods, every escape pod in the world: alcohol, you know, weed, porn. But you're not living in balance. You're not living an authentic life. What was it that triggered you to go, okay, enough? I got to make a pivot here, or I'm going to spend the rest of my life so miserable.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to highlight one thing about what you said, and then I answer the question, that looking for the false evidence and just sort of continuing this story, I discovered over time, especially working with more and more people, that this is actually by design, that we all have, we have many parts inside of us, but you could simplify it to two. We have a part of us that wants to live and just do stuff and experience life and connect and try new things. And it's like the bold adventure inside of us. And then we also have another part of us, though, that wants complete, like, no pain. It wants no failure, nothing that can hurt us, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I call it the safety police. And that part wants to keep everything safe. And the best strategy it has for safety is to downsize your life, keep it as small and familiar as possible, and avoid all change and all risk, keep it static. So what happens is, when we're having those thoughts of like, oh, that wouldn't work, and they think I'm a loser, and this doesn't, like, that's actually a propaganda campaign.
Yeah.
From the part of you, it's like, well, hey, if it's not going to work out, don't try. If they're going to reject you, then don't ask, you know, and it creates this very elaborate web of stories. So I think it's always beneficial for people to start to see that, and they see it's not true. It just has an agenda. And there's other ways that we can create a sense of safety in ourselves besides escaping from our own lives. But for me, I believe that the trigger was a threshold of pain where, you know, there's these escape pods, and then there's the pain, and it's the pain of like not living life. It's the pain of feeling inferior. It's the pain of self-hatred. It's the pain of missing out on opportunities. Like, that starts to compound, and then I'm increasing my escape pod use.
Right.
And, you know, fortunately, I mean, some people might go to like harder drugs or, you know, just sort of go further. But for me, there was something, I personally believe that it's like, it's the calling. It's my future self that's like pulling back through time and like, hey, come on, buddy, let's go. You know, something, divine grace, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like this moment of, I could just see that the story I'd been telling myself, that the future will somehow just be better, magically, I saw it as a lie. I saw it as false. And then I came to stark confrontation with, I'm 21 now. I could easily be 31 and be in the same boat.
Yeah.
I could be 41 in the same boat. And for me, probably the biggest hunger with intimacy was connection. I really wanted, like, I wasn't thinking about career and all that stuff and public speaking. I was just thinking about, like, I want to connect. And I thought it was just with women, but I realized it was also just to have more authentic relationships, even with men, just to be known. So that hunger was there, and I knew it wasn't going to change. And the idea of spending 20 more years so isolated, was, now all of a sudden that pain was so massive. The idea of getting rejected or getting a no or being embarrassed, by comparison, that pain got smaller.
Yeah.
And so there's a great quote. Lisa Rankin said this: when the pain of staying the same exceeds the fear of making the change, that's when we leap. And so that's what happened for me. And I literally was like, okay, I'm going to go to the internet and I'm going to figure this out. And I just started to look, and it's not like I had not done that before, but it was different. You know, when you're really like ready, it's different. It's like whatever it takes.
Shows up
I'm going to do
different,
whatever it takes. And that was the energy I came from. I started studying, learning, you know, found pickup artist stuff, which was, some of it was actually really solid. It was really teaching like just self-esteem and valuing yourself, and how to carry yourself with more confidence. And that some of the stuff was kind of manipulated, but some of it was really core basic psychology teachings that you can, you know, hey, that thought stream, not all of it's true. It's like, oh my God, really? You know? And so I started to learn, and then I just was willing to go do things, go be embarrassed, go fail. And it was terrifying, but it was like there was a gun to my head. It was like, I'm not going back. I can't go back to that cage. I mean, it's so here I go. And then I just became, and then I got a taste of it. I got a taste of when you're bold, something different can happen and it can be good. And then it became like, okay, all right, this is going to be a way of life and it has been for the last, 18 years.
I love that. You know, the things that I kept saying to myself, it really rings true in my life, where I was like, well, when I get to college, it'll be better. High school, not for me. College, it'll be better. I'll be different. I'll have a whole new identity. Well, that happened, and it didn't work out because I still felt the same way, and it was just perpetuating. And then after that, I'll join my dad's business, and I'll start making great money, and I'll help my dad build his business. And then the money will solve my problems, because then I'll have money to go on vacations that I want to and buy what I want to. And that didn't happen. And then it got stronger and stronger until one day my brain, the registration was like, dude, it's been quite a while since college, and you haven't made these shifts, and your relationships are suffering, and now you're a dad. And like, this was recent. This was like 5 years ago. And the question I kept asking myself, even in college, was, this can't be it. This fucking can't be it. This cannot be it. This cannot be how you live life. And I watched some of my friends, and a lot of our clients, our coaching clients who are even older, in their 50s and 60s, they may have reached a high level, right, in their job or in their business or with money or with success. They're still feeling this same thing, even though on paper they look really good. They're feeling this even harder because there's such a duality between who they really are, which is actually unknown, and this fight of like keeping up appearances, and they're just living in this middle zone. And that is a vicious cycle that will take you down eventually. It'll cause health problems, relationship problems. And, that's a dangerous road. And so, how do you, I shared what I did, which I just, every morning I'm like, this isn't it. What else is possible? What else is out there? There's gotta be something different. And to your point earlier, wherever you are there, that's where you are. Wherever you go, there you are. And I know a lot of people who, friends of ours that we really no longer speak with, that have moved geographical locations to make life better. And it never will be. They change spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, jobs. It'll never get better. It will never get better until you get better. That's it.
Yeah.
Have new habits, new skills, new mindset. It will never get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say that confidence is an inside job.
Yeah.
And you try to shift the circumstances, and that's not going to solve it. Now, of course, as you shift, those things, how you approach life, how you see yourself, your perspective, your courage, as you change those things, your external circumstances can change, and they do for the better.
Sure.
However, if you're keeping the same software, as it were, and then trying to move the chess pieces around on the board outside of you, or accumulate enough of something, then at best, you're going to get temporary conditional self-worth. If I get enough money, if I get enough praise, if I sleep with enough people, if I get at a certain power level, if I would achieve some certain role that society has told me, if I've done this and this and this by this time in my life, then I'm enough. Yeah. And we're just hunting for it. And, fortunately, we discover that it's a ruse, and that at some point we wake up to it. And even if it's at 50, that's fine. It's because then we can awaken to something more real,
Totally.
which is, who are you? What are you here to do? What do you value? And then, and we can stop. I mean, some people, no matter what you can acquire and accumulate, if you are not on your own side, this is a distinction I call it. I have a book called On My Own Side that's about this. Like, if you are not on your own side, it does not matter what you achieve or accumulate or how many people love you or what relationships you're in, you suffer. Because the most intimate experience you have is with you. And it's like having a relationship with someone who's abusive or critical or always seeing what's wrong with you. And it's, so yes, you achieved that thing, but it wasn't fast enough and someone else could have done it better. Or you got that thing published, or those people said it was amazing. Yeah, but it wasn't that amazing. I probably could have done better. So, and I just think about how that could suck the joy out of your life. If you're there with your sweetheart on a vacation and she's like, yeah, but your body's not that. I mean, it's kind of fat. It's not very good. Like, right. Wow, all day long. Geez, no wonder I don't feel great no matter what I achieve. And then we hustle to achieve more. Yeah. And so I think getting control of that process is a must, or else, we really can't experience the confidence that we want.
Yeah. Operative word being what you said, which is it's not sustainable. Hustle, grind, crushing it is not sustainable. And episode 200, we literally talked about the hustle porn stars that in my opinion are a little dangerous, and they're polluting the brains of especially younger people by saying, like, just hustle and grind this thing and you'll just get out of anything you want. The money will come and you'll get the island and you'll get the yacht. And it doesn't work like that, because you're still on that yacht as you are. You're still on that island as you are. You're on the vacation. And so what we're talking about here is how to create sustainable change in your life. And then that will open up possibilities and a whole world for you to actually serve the world, not serve yourself through the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's the switch that occurs for people somewhere along the way too. Yep. Is how much can I get? How much can I, because then it's going to fill, I'm going to get enough. And then at some point we realize, like, wait a minute, it's way beyond that. It's how much can I give? Yeah. And what I give is what I actually get to experience on a full level, or even things like that are intangible, like, wow, this relationship. And even that makes it seem like it's a static thing. It's this moment with my son, this moment with my friend, this moment with a client, this moment with my lover, like this moment right now. This is rich. This is wealth. Like, for me, a question I asked myself not that long ago is, what if relationships were my most valuable asset? I've been studying investing a lot for the last year, especially. And when I get into something, I obsess. I just, how much can I, it's like the Matrix Jack in the back of the head. How much can I take in quickly? And so I'm doing that and I'm studying it, and it's interesting. And I have to keep reminding myself, like, okay, what if the most important thing, though, the most valuable asset is relationship, is those moments with people and feeding those. And because otherwise, you talk about the person who's on the yacht or the island, in order to get to that level, we have to have bought into the system and the way it is so much that if we're not balanced with, we just start to believe that it's also real, that it does mean so much if I have this amount of money. Money is so real. And it's like, well, wait a minute. And one of the key things I teach people is you got to determine your own reality.
Totally.
What is success to you? And so many people are being driven by what society tells them they need to have, or, well, my parents would thought, if the cultural field tells me that this is what matters. And I think a true mark of confidence is, I'm going to live life on my terms. And that could mean achieving, and earning or that's fine. But, is going for a walk with your son and holding his hand as you do it and talking and being with him, is that, like, can that feel like just as big of, or maybe even more of a success than, making the huge promotion of tens of thousands of dollars or whatever? Like, what if in your reality, at the end of the day or the end of your life, you're like, oh my gosh, that moment with his little hand in mine, I am rich. Yeah. I am wealthy. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's superior or the right thing. I'm saying that we all want to determine that for ourselves.
Well, you got to do what serves you best. and the way that I run like the sounding board is, in this present moment, when I look back on this moment, will I regret doing this or not doing this? And that, creating a mission statement for my life to guide me, and making sure that things actually serve me versus not serve me and the mission that I have. So yeah, I mean, I choose my kids over anything. I mean, I tell this story a lot. It's like I had a very large job offer from someone. I've never really had a job except for, working with my dad. And I had a very large job offer from someone to run a very large sales team for a big company. And I said, listen, I really just want to tell you how much I appreciate you thinking about me for this. And it's a no. And the guy was like, well, how are you so confident with that? This is 7 figures. And I said, I understand, but there are sacrifices I'm not willing to make that you're going to make a mandatory. I'm not willing to stay in Baltimore. I want to be in Los Angeles. I'm not willing to come into an office. I don't want that to be my view every day. And I'm not willing to have you dictate what you're going to pay me based on performance. I want to dictate that. And lastly, and the most important is, making this commitment makes me committed to the money, which makes me not committed to my family, because the first and foremost choices I'm going to have to make are for the money, for this job, for this thing. And my focus will be completely off. And so I really appreciate it. And the guy said, well, look, we can work it out. What if it were a higher number? And I said, it's still a no, because I know confidently that I can make that kind of money with my businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm not willing to sacrifice time with my kids, because I'll never get that back. And yeah, okay. So I go from 37, or I think I was 37 or 36 to 40, let's say. And I accumulate a couple $1,000,000 from you, but I missed out on my son who was a newborn, and I miss out on my daughter who was 3.5 or 4 at the time. And they said, yeah, but you'll have evenings and weekends. And I said, I understand, but you don't understand. I value sitting at breakfast with her. I value just jumping upstairs and grabbing lunch. I value taking her to school and picking her up. Like I said, out of 100 and some kids at this little private school my daughter goes to, my wife and I are one of 2 that are the only set of parents that do pick up and drop off out of all those people, right? And I value that, and I'm not willing to trade anything for that. So if that means that I don't take this position, I'll just figure out a way to make that and have it all. And that's where my confidence in me came in. My dad always used to say that, like, if there's ever a doubt, if there's ever a choice you have to make, always drop those chips solid up on you. Always bet on you. And if you can't perform, or you lack in your performance, then up your skills, up your knowledge, up your education. But don't ever not bet on you, because you will fail, and that's fine. But continue to bet on you, because the more you bet on you, you'll just keep coming back and being stronger and growing and educating yourself. And then the thing for me was, I've got to give that back, just like you. I've got to teach. I've got to give it back, because that fulfills me.
Yeah, man, I love this. It's powerful. It's inspiring what you're sharing.
Yeah, thanks,
and
man.
you're speaking my language with the bet on you, because that is it generates confidence. And I feel like with confidence for people, it's a chicken or the egg thing often. It's like, but I don't have it. I don't feel confident. I don't believe in myself. I'm flooded with doubt. Like, so I'm not going to do it. This is something that when people get this, it changes everything. It's that people are waiting for the circumstances, for life, for something to give them the confidence. But confidence is something you claim. And so it's in the moment where you're feeling the most doubt that you like claim belief. You bet on yourself. Yep. Or it's when you are feeling, I've dealt with a lot of physical issues from emotional stuff. I talk about a lot in my book, Not Nice, about how when we're excessively nice and don't know ourselves and are pleasing, we can actually develop physical patterns of pain, which I did for many years. And so I'd have these like bouts of physical pain, and I knew that they weren't structured. For years I thought I had a biological autoimmune condition. I was diagnosed on medicines, all that stuff. But at some point I started to get off all that, and I was like, no, this is emotional, energetic, mental stress. Like I can do this. And So I'd make progress, and then I have these bouts of intense pain where I can barely walk. And I'm like, but I'm waiting. I'm like, okay, the pain's going to lift, and then I can believe again that I'm going to be okay. And I realized one moment, I was like, no, you find strength within the weakness. You find health within the pain, and you claim it. And when you do that, it starts to shift in your life. And so when people are like, I'll wait until I feel less doubt. No, there's like that decision that needs to be made. And then when you start to bet on yourself, you get results, and confidence is a byproduct of that action, right? So yes, maybe you fail, but you learn something, or you do succeed, or generally people can do more than they realized, especially when they've jumped in, or they've, to use the metaphor, they've thrown their hat over the fence, and now they got to figure out a way to climb it. Like all of a sudden, we access, because all of us have so much more capacity than we access, right? Whether it's a physical level or an emotional level, like there's a limiter there, that's our comfort. And then when circumstances though are intense, like something were to happen physically to your family or whatever, you would find all kinds of resourcefulness. Or you're like, hey, I'm going to make this business work because I turned down that offer. I'm going to figure this thing out. And that's how we unlock it, is by betting on ourselves. So I love that you're sharing that.
So, dude, you and I could talk for like 3 hours. A couple things you said there that I want to go back to. How do you find that sense of confidence when you just feel so depressed or so upset with yourself, or that perpetuating self-talk from middle school up, and now you're 30 and you do not like your life, you do not like who you are or your circumstances, but how do you find the confidence when you just have none of it left, or none of it at all in a tank? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I love that. I think there's two things. One is the power of immersion. So you need to start introducing new information into the system, which would be example like listening to this podcast or a book or other things. Like you need to be, because if you're just circling around in your own stories, that's a closed loop, and that's unlikely to change. But if you start to introduce, even if you're just like listening and you're like, I don't know, but just start to let it drip in. That's not going to be the end of it. It's like just listening to something and it's all perfect, but it starts to give you a new perspective. Even if it doesn't feel true yet, you start to have access to it. Then the next thing, and I think most people skip this step, they want to go from listening to like, Tony Robbins punch through a wall and go do it. And what's missing actually is there's an intermediate step, which is you need to like make contact with the suffering that you're creating for yourself. People want to leapfrog this step, but if we do, then we're just running, and we're running scared, and we're desperate. And it increasing your capacity to feel the suffering, feel like, wow, and it's partly just like becoming really aware, like, wow, I feel whatever. Maybe you feel helpless, maybe you feel frustrated and angry, maybe you feel stuck. You just I name it. I feel so stuck right now. And then we're trying to get away from it. Like, no, I am stuck. I feel so stuck. And then just notice what the stuck feels like, and just don't try to change it. Don't try to fix it. Just like be in it and be like, yeah, this is what my life feels like when I am perceiving it as stuck. And then get even more curious. What is the story that creates stuck? What is the emotion of stuck? What is the behaviors of stuck? Like, really make a study. It's the same thing if someone wants to change, like smoking, for example. They smoke those cigarettes as mindfully as possible. Same thing, like become as mindful as possible, because what that does is if you truly do this, and this one took me a long time to get, which is you want to just kapwing off of it and go. But if you really go into it, like just 10 minutes of being like, I am so stuck, and you just surrender to it. All of a sudden, it's like kind of this beautiful gift. Like you think you're just going to be like game over then. But actually what happens is there's this other force inside you. Remember I said we have two parts. We have that part of us that wants to live, and that part will kick on. It'll kick on gear, and it will say, hold on a second. No. I'm not stuck. No, and it will, and then you'll start to access the next level, which is enough of this.
Yeah.
Like, no, no, no. And that's what I call the threshold moment that I described, that you described, is like, life is more than this. And now you probably didn't know what was going to change and where you were going or how it was all going to look, but you're like, I know it's not this.
Yeah.
And that energy then starts to build, and then you can get into some sort of motion,
Right.
because now you're accessing a lot more potential and a lot more energy.
Yeah. You're shifting that snowball effect from it just dragging to it pulling, and it gets stronger and it gets stronger until one day the outside world actually doesn't affect you, because your ascension, your energy levels have gone up so much that actually, this is something I want to talk to you about, get your take on it. I realized that the meaning that I was making of things was so infinite, and that I didn't have any basis or anything for any of the meaning I was making of things. But I realized somebody called my attention to it through a beautiful course, the Landmark Forum. I give a lot of credit to that course and to that community, that it showed me how I was taking something that happened and making this meaning based on my past programming. And it was like, holy hell, that shit happens all day. It happens all day, every minute, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you cut that? But the snowball, as you give yourself more info and immerse yourself into learning, it will never happen automatically. And that's one of the dangerous pieces that I find with most self-help programs and seminars and masterminds, is that there's a lot of surface level activities, a lot of stuff that comes down the outside, but if you're not changing the inside, it will never work. It will never work. You can't just do some push-ups and punch a board and then be cured. It just doesn't work like that. Your brain doesn't work like that, So how does somebody, like, I want to roll this into something. How does somebody, I think I actually suffer from this a little bit. And I used to beat myself up because my personality looks so extroverted, sounds so extroverted. People, like, they get to know me on a personal level. They're like, damn, you're so quiet. Like, it's not like your podcast, or you're like, you don't talk a lot. And I go, yeah, I own that introvertedness where I gather my energy back from. How does somebody who's kind of maybe stuck in those two worlds, or even just stuck in the introverted, how do they overcome that social anxiety, or that need to be liked, or need to go to the party, or I need to go out to the bar to be a part of the community, or a part of my friend group? Like, how does someone get through that? Is it these same kind of tactics?
Well, that's a fascinating topic, and there's a lot of identity and assumptions and thoughts of perceptions of how humans work in the world that are kind of layered into that question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to address a few of them.
Sure.
Most people have heard of, like, introversion, extroversion difference. People think of an extrovert likes to be around people, gets energized by that. An introvert prefers alone time, or maybe one or two people, more depth conversation, and gets recharged by time alone. People have heard that distinction. There's a lot of stuff that gets layered in there. The one, for example, is how you are around other people can determine whether it's energizing or not. And a lot of people experience social anxiety, which is different. Introversion and extroversion are not, the social anxiety is a separate thing.
Right.
You could have an extrovert who's got social anxiety and an introvert who's got social anxiety. So what happens is, if we have social anxiety, and we're evaluating ourselves before I go talk to somebody, am I going to do it right? They're probably not going to like me. Oh, I knew it. I didn't do that well enough. You pick at yourself afterwards.
Yeah.
Or social anxiety can also manifest as pleasing. So I'm going to say what I need to say and talk about what you want to talk about, and not really share much about myself because I don't want to be selfish.
Yep.
And people will leave those interactions and they'll feel drained. And they'll say, I'm an introvert, man. I just don't like being around people.
Yeah.
Or they get a little chip on their shoulder, introvert. It's like, oh man, those people are so superficial. I don't like that environment. I don't like those kind of people. And we think it's the identity of the introvert, but it's actually the way you're being with others.
Yes.
That is making it draining. And what I've seen, and a lot of people I've worked with who are like, I'm an introvert. I'm like, okay, maybe. And let's change that. And then they start to change that way. And all of a sudden they're like, I felt really energized by that.
Yeah.
That was great. I want to do that again. And so we want to really see that first and foremost. And the second thing, then you get to start to see, and I really think that it's, we want to be able to relate more freely and authentically with less concern about other people's thoughts and judgments. Then we get to see, and even then, I think it is being able to see in this moment, what do I want, and being able to choose, or what do I feel called to right now? Because sometimes that introvert thing might just be it's almost like a little bit of like, I think introverts tend to be a little bit, we just feel more.
Yeah.
We're a little more sensitive, right? And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, spending time with the, I'll like have a schedule to hang out with a friend who I love. And before the hangout, I'm like, wanna, and so that's a slippery slope into like, you're avoiding like change or transition from one thing to another. But then when I get with a friend, I'm like, this is great. I want to do this
Right.
again. This is so
Right.
fun. So I just, it's really about awareness in the moment and being able to choose and not pegging too strongly to like, I am like this, because then we can use that to isolate. We can use that to avoid becoming more authentic in our expressiveness. So I always take those identities with a bit more fluidity, and just become really curious in this moment, what would fuel me right now? And maybe sometimes I do need to kind of kick myself over the edge to go,
Yeah.
because I'm going to be charged. And if I'm not charged afterwards, let me get really curious about how I was and the environment there, and not so much like, I just don't like being around people.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't pigeonhole. That's awesome. That's such a great explanation, because it's really who you are in that conversation. Because I can coach all day long, and I'm jacked up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, if you have me in like a businessy talk where there's a lot of business jargon, and like we're talking about spreadsheets and quarterly reports, I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I don't.
That's
I gotta
probably most people, by the way. I think there's going to be a small percentage who are like, yeah, quarterly, let's go.
That's just the first thing that came to mind. But like, that's a learned behavior, and to not pigeonhole yourself like that really makes sense. To not just say like, well, I'm an extrovert. This is the type of person I am. I'm a dog lover. I'm not a people person. I'm not a partier. I'm not, like, I am a people pleaser, like whatever it might be. Just not pigeonholing yourself into that, because I think that personality test world is definitely a business, not necessarily a cut and dry model. So
Sure.
I think you go, well, I'm an extrovert. I love going out. Let's go out. But then there's a guy like me who has an extroverted side, or a type A, like outgoing side, or I'm like, I hate going out. I think it's a complete waste of time. Why would I sit at a bar where I can barely hear you and pay 5 times more for a drink when we can sit here, have what we want on TV? Because I don't watch sports, so I don't want to watch sports at a bar. Like, I get to use my own bathroom, I get cheaper drinks, and I get to talk to you about stuff that we're interested in. The one thing I want to circle back to you on is that people pleasing, or like talking about feeling like you need to talk about things to impress somebody else. And you mentioned this a couple of times, like being a nice person or being nice. And that always isn't good. It actually can be very draining and negative to you. So like roll through that, and how being less nice actually has some positive effects to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a really important sort of realization for people to see, that maybe nice is not always the way to be. Even though when we were young, we got nice conditioning. It says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yes.
Don't be mean. Don't just be nice. And, there's some perhaps positive intent behind that. But generally what happens is, if you study, when I'm being nice, generally I'm going to be filtering what I might say. I am going to be thinking about what is it that you want to hear. I don't want to say anything that might upset you or offend you. And so it's actually not kindness. Niceness, most of the time, is fear-based, and I am terrified of confrontation or upset or friction in any relationship. I got to keep everything smooth in my life and everyone happy. And so niceness is put simply is avoidance of direct contact with other people, because you can't have direct contact in real relationships that don't have differing opinions.
Sure.
And sometimes it's it's a real conflict and there's a fight or something, but sometimes it's just simply saying, you want to do that thing, I don't want to do that thing. And someone who's really, and I know because I experienced this for many years myself, even that, which might sound so simple, can become bottled up and hard to say. So we say,
Sure.
oh, maybe we could do that thing. And either we just do it because I'm nice, or we have 1,001 indirect ways to try to get what we want, because we've learned
Right.
you can't ask for what you want. You can't say no. So I have to say, we could do that. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm wondering if this might happen if we did.
Right.
Did that work? So we
Right.
can't be direct. And what happens is we start to disconnect more and more from ourselves. So if I'm really nice and I'm talking to you, I'm looking at, what do you think? What do you feel? What do you want? What's right? And again, that might sound selfless in a good way, but it's actually too far down the spectrum. And I become alienated from myself. And now I am just a shell of who I am to try to preserve some sort of positive feelings in you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could do things I don't want to do. I could put myself in situations that are not right for me. I could screw myself financially or in business.
Sure.
I could work jobs that I shouldn't work. I could take on more work than I agreed to. I could be in a relationship for months or years longer than is healthy. I mean, the list goes on. I've seen this all with clients.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is we need to start to reclaim. And I always tell people the opposite of nice is not to be an asshole, or, the opposite of nice is to be real.
Authentic.
Is to be authentic, is to be able to start to share, and maybe messily at first, but then more skillfully. What do I really think? What do I really feel? What do I want? What do I not want? And you start to become a presence in your own life.
Yeah.
You start to become the main character. You start to live in your reality and not be so terrified of the opinions, the passing opinions of others. And I think if we don't claim this, we end up living a life that is not our own, which is, one of the primary regrets of people who are dying.
Yeah. And that's a great way to end that, is like, it might not hurt now. It might have like a sting now, but the open wound with salt on it will be later on in life. And it could be tomorrow, or it could be 50 years from now. But how does someone shift this today, right? There's always one person listening that will write to me and say, the universe delivered this episode for me. Out of like tens of thousands of people that listen to these episodes, it was me you were talking to. So I know that you had mentioned that there's different levels of authenticity, but if someone is so caught up in that being nice world and people pleasing and giving people what they need, how do you... So 2 questions. What are the levels of authenticity, and how do you just start by sharing what you feel, so and not really being so concerned with how someone reacts or what they're going to think about you? But then, like, how do you find and seek out those people that can actually accept you for you, yet also help you grow into the person that you really want to become? And I want to give you a quick example in the audience, an example. So one of my best buddies, Aaron, he's my partner. He does the Front Runner episodes. He's a business partner, and we run a big mastermind and live event together. And he's one of my closest friends because of a situation like this. His birthday last year, he said, "Hey man, I want to go paintballing for my birthday. I'm organizing it up. You in?" And at that moment, I thought, it's his birthday. Let's do what he wants. And I said, that's not authentic to me. And I won't have any resentment toward him. I just am not going to be that happy. But it's not about me. It's about him. So I should just probably do it. And I went through this whole world. And I said, you know what, dude? I love you enough and you love me enough for me to be honest with you. I'm not a huge fan of paintball. And so if it's okay with you, I will not be at paintball, but I will meet you at the bar or the restaurant or whatever after. Are you okay with that? And he was like, 100%. Thank you for sharing that with me. That is an authentic relationship that promotes me being authentic. So I wasn't worried like, oh, Aaron's going to be crushed. Man, I'm an asshole. It's his fucking birthday, dude. Man up. Go paintball with the guy. But he was happier because he knew that I was being totally transparent with him. And so levels of authenticity, and how does someone find those people to help their circle and level them up?
Yeah, great questions. And I love that story. It
Yeah.
is those things, like those are the moments, those daily moments of life where if you play it that way, you can feel free and good and connected. And if you don't, you can have the same circumstances and feel irritated, oppressed, back pain,
Right.
all these issues. And it's the simple inability to say yes or no. And so I love that story. And yeah, the levels of authenticity. So people think of authenticity. There's one level which is like, I'm going to dress how I want to dress. I'm going to talk how I want to talk. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to be real. I'm going to share what I'm thinking and feeling and noticing. That's one level of authenticity, but it goes much further than that, because it's like, who am I? What do I value?
Yeah.
What are the rules of my reality? That's something that I really help people with, because they're like, it's wrong to say no. I was working with someone who felt it was wrong to reschedule people. I've already said yes. Oh my gosh, that's unacceptable to reschedule them. And you can have a desire to follow through on commitments, but if something comes up or there's a better opportunity, something, like, we got to have some flexibility here. So he can't be authentic because he's trying to operate in these rules that are really rigid or don't serve him. Rules like you can't say no. Rules like you got to do it. It's your friend's birthday.
Right.
Or if someone has done something for you, now you have to do something. You have to give them whatever they want, all these rules that we haven't chosen. So the next level of authenticity is to really start to decide, and I have people create a bill of rights. I have a right to this. I have a right to that. Like, what are my rights? I have a right to say no, for any reason. I have a right to change my mind. I have a right to ask for anything. And the person can say no, but I have a right to ask. Like, I have these people list, they create their own, and then they recite them regularly to really start to internalize that. And then there's another level of authenticity, though, which is kind of what you were describing in that job offer situation. It's like, I know who I am, and I know what I want, and I'm going to steer this life. And so that leads to like bigger changes in people's lives, ending a relationship or starting a relationship, changing jobs, changing careers, that's another level of authenticity. And they all work together, and they all, require levels of boldness.
Yeah.
So that gets to the question of like, well, then, how do we do this? Well, it starts with that permission. I have a right to. And I would say if someone's really struggling with this stuff, again, take a moment, instead of trying to, punch through the wall, which is not sustainable. Start with, how has this been going, and is this working for me in my life? In my book called Not Nice, I talk about this. I call it the high cost of nice. Like, what is the effect? What is this doing to me? Because the goal is, if you really look at it and say, what is this causing me to miss out on? What is the negative impact of this, not only on me and on others? How does this damage my relationships? And you really look at the high cost of that niceness. That's like someone looking at like the toxic effect of a certain, drug or food they're eating. They might just be like, wow, I can do better, And then, again, surrounding yourself, putting yourself in environments where there is a new set of rules. And for someone who doesn't have anyone in their life, like everyone around them is saying, yeah, you got to be a not selfish person and give and always say yes. And if that's first of all, is that the environment you're really in right now? Or is that from when you were young,
right,
from your interpretation of the nice conditioning, and you are carrying it? Most people, that's often the case. But let's say that's still only happening. Well, here you are, you're listening to this podcast. Maybe you're one out of those thousands of people who is like, this is going to click for. And listen to the story. Don't listen to the story that Ian shares as like, oh, that was neat for him. Like, no.
That's real.
It was uncomfortable for him. There was a time in his life where he would not have done that.
Yep.
And now he does. And the same thing for me. So we need to, you're hearing a new reality as you listen to this. So start with books. You mentioned before we talked about this, there's No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Glover, which is fantastic. Yep. I have a book called Not Nice.
Yep.
Start immersing in these worlds. And then look around. There might be people already in your life that you can be more real with. And the
Yeah.
limiter on being more real is not them, it's been me.
You. Yeah.
I've been unwilling. So find those likely people, that close friend, that your partner, your lover, someone where you're like, you know what? If there's any real relationship here that's worth having, I'm going to take a risk. And you just share. And sometimes it's saying no to something.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just revealing, instead of saying, how's it going? You'll say, that's great. How you doing? You say, well, here's something going really well. You share the good in your life. That can be very vulnerable too. Or you're like, I'm struggling with this. You share either one. You
Sure.
take the risk to be more real. Someone's got to do it. And most people will not. If you really want to create this in your life, you need to be the leader on a social level, on a relationship level. And then if you start to practice that in those closer relationships, and not everywhere, like if you got an uncle who is really shut down, is going to mock you, don't do it with him.
Don't do it with him. Yeah. Be aware.
Don't do it. It's a little sapling. You don't want to boot on the sapling. You got to let it start. Once you get stronger, then you can go talk to your uncle and say, listen, Uncle Harvey, shut it, whatever. But start with the low hanging fruit. Start with where it's going to be easier. And the cool thing is once you start to do this, forging new relationships from that place is often easier because you just show up that way. And you start to attract, as you become more authentic, you will attract people who are that way, and you will be repelled by, or you will repel people that are not that way. And you'll start to create a new world. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens with consistent practice over time.
Yeah. Something that I want to add to that as far as how you level yourself up, which will always level your environment. And then you'll inevitably level the environment up, and then maybe you move to another environment. Is whatever you learn, if this is your calling, don't go get a coaching certificate and think you're a coach. If you want to practice and preach this and teach this, just grab somebody and say, hey, I'd like to share with you what I learned this weekend at this event or this book. Here are the top 3 things I learned. I'd like to have a conversation with you about it. Start there. Then start doing Facebook Lives. Really push yourself. Again, there's a stage to all this. And then do like something bold like I did. I bought a podcast called Men on Purpose. I didn't start this podcast. It was destined for the scrap heap, and I kind of saved it. And I put myself out there every week talking about this thing that I say I'm an expert in, because I didn't just learn it, I embody it and I teach it and I continue to up-level it. So those are the phases of how I've gotten to this point. Same with you. You didn't start as an expert. You didn't just go to Stanford to get an expertise. You practiced it, you teach it, you work through it in your own life, and that's how you can continue to level up. The environments will naturally be attracted to you that you want to serve. It just happens that way. And the people that just can't get you, they say you've changed, they don't like the new you cut them quick. Just got to cut them quick, because they're just going to drag you down. And it's
and it's so helpful for people to see, like, maybe there's loss there or change or something, but on the other side is something so much better.
Beautiful.
Imagine being around people in your life who are on your team, who want to know you, who bring it, and after you spend time with them, you're inspired, you're moved, you're man, that's you're not pulling teeth to try to get them to be more authentic with you. They're bringing it, and you're both bringing it. And then what does that unlock? We haven't talked about this, but the next level of authenticity, probably beyond all of that, is like soul purpose. Men on purpose, right? Like, if you can start to unlock the real you, and the real you isn't just where you live or the job that you do. It is fulfilling something in your existence here.
Yeah.
And we want to distill it down to one sentence or something. And we can have a mission statement. I have a purpose, but that's just our putting it into a structure. But it is so beyond that, and it is not just one thing. It is, we're living it. And when you are doing that, the closer you are to that, and it's probably always a moving target, the better life feels. And I don't mean it's all pleasure and there's no pain. The more you take risks in life, the more there might be discomforts and failures, and
of course.
But there's something about yeah, but I am doing what I'm here to do, and I'm being the me that I'm meant to be, and I know it's going to keep growing. Uh, and that is one of the most like deeply fulfilling things beyond any particular achievement or even relationship or experience.
Yeah, I love that. All right, last thing before we wrap. I'm telling you, you and I could roll for hours, man. I
Yeah, I
love
feel
this
that. Yeah.
conversation. I love your thought process and your views on everything and your expertise. Um, when I started my business, I was so caught up in the fact that I was being fake and this imposter syndrome. And in all honesty, running my real estate business before I really started my coaching practice, I felt like this isn't it. Now there's two things there. One was it was dangerous because I stayed in it even though I felt like an imposter. But I also followed the imposter syndrome, and I followed the breadcrumbs through the woods. And I realized that the real estate sales business for me, with me in it as a salesperson, was a means to an end. It was teaching me something. It was leveling me up. And I had to get through these 5 things before it would let me go and let me on to do what's really my mission in life. And so I fought through that for years. Every open house, every listing appointment, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not a real estate agent. This is stupid. Why? I don't feel this. I don't live real estate. I don't love this game. I love these people that I'm serving. Like, how does somebody, I know there's probably layers of that too, but how does somebody who feels in the imposter syndrome, how do they even just start to find something that's authentic? Because maybe it's 20, 30, 40 years in a business, in a job, and they're
Yeah.
so deep rooted. Like, how do they even begin that to get out of that imposter syndrome that they just feel inside?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing uh, just to determine is some people that I work with feel like an imposter, not because they're in the wrong field, but because of an old identity
Yeah.
that they don't feel like they deserve to be in the position that they are. And so that's something to suss out, right? Is to say,
Sure.
okay, am I just like stories like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, people are going to find out, is it that kind of thing? In which case it's more of like a raising your confidence, owning your value, seeing your strengths, and really knowing that. But let's say it's like they start to do that, and it's like, no, I know I can do this job, but it's like it's not what I'm here. It's not right.
Right.
That's the piece you're talking about.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that short circuits the process is it's like I gotta. Well, what else would I do?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
if it's been a long
Okay.
time.
Fair
And
enough.
then that question is just so overwhelming and scary and feels like such a drop down because of all the career capital you've built up in this
Yeah.
field, to start at the bottom and not earn anything. It's just, and if you got bills and family and mortgage, and it's like, oh, not possible. And so we go, what else would I do? The process is overwhelming. We're done. Just carry on, try to make the best of it. That's what most people will do. And be reasonable, be responsible, just
Just
tough
staying
it
in it.
out.
Yeah. Tough it
Just stay
out.
in it.
Right.
And so what we want, again, we want to start to do is don't go directly from like, something's not right to I got to figure it out. We want to give ourselves a season. And that's, a season in the calendar year is 3 months.
Right.
Could be longer, shorter, whatever, but it's a period of time to discover. I'm in a season of discovery. I'll say that with clients, like, you're in a season of discovery. And they're like,
Yeah.
ah, yeah, great. Yeah. It feels fantastic, right? And it's like, well, yeah, because we want to, well, what does it start with? It starts with something's not right.
Yep. This isn't right.
Maybe I'm succeeding. Maybe I have money. I'm at this open house. I can sell. Something's not right. Before we jump to what else, it's like, yeah, let's like, tell me more. What's missing? That's what I ask people.
Curious.
What's missing? What's what what's not right? And we start to get really curious and start to see, what am I really hungry for?
Yeah.
What is, and it doesn't come in one moment because you pulled it out of your left brain. It's like it's life whispering to you,
Yeah.
calling to you. So that's why you got to have a season of it. And it's uncomfortable because now you're entering into a space of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick on this job until I retire and die. That's certainty, even if I don't like it.
Right.
But there's something else maybe Now we're uncertain, and people don't like that. They want to clamp down into total certainty of like, okay, it's this new track.
Right.
But
Right.
then they're just knee-jerk reaction, hastily picking. We want to be in the season of discovery, which is uncertain, and take time. Talk to people. Go for long hikes and just like listen and think and reflect. And what do I feel? What do I want? What am I here to do? Ask those questions without needing to have an answer.
Yeah.
You're just being with them. What I found, and then people will do is if they really give themselves that space, it takes down the anxiety because you don't have to do something hastily. And I've had people that go through a season of discovery and say, you know what? It is in this position, in this job, but it's in this field, but it's a different place.
Yeah.
It's a different role. Or the way I'm doing it is wrong. And I got to show up differently. And then they get lit up, and that's great. But some people, it's like, I'm changing my whole career, and but then you'll get somewhere in that season of discovery, you'll start to get a calling or a pull or something starts to nag at you. And someone who's in that season right now is listening to this, you'll be one of those tens of thousands of people who's like, oh my God, that's me.
That's me.
And what happens then is people, then you're in this phase where you need to start really actively engaging, and people will want to figure it all out from the safety of their couch.
Yeah.
Or from their computer. And it's like, no, you got to well, you can do it from your computer because now you can research online, but you got to start I've done this with a man who was at a crossroads in his career. He was a psychiatrist. Should I keep working for this hospital? Should I go become a head of a hospital? Should I go teach in medical schools? Should I go create a private practice? I don't know. There's so many different paths. Should I leave medicine and do something else? I don't know. And I was like, he's like, I've done therapy, and I tried to figure out, I was like, how long have you been pondering this? And he's like, 3 years, at least. I was like, okay. That's not a season of discovery. That's like a holding pattern.
Yeah.
Your season of discovery is not 3 years long. That's something different. So, I mean, he'd been thinking about it till he was, blue in the face. And I said, okay. And at the beginning of our work together is like, we're going to discover through doing.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to decide on a path and take several steps down that path. And that doesn't have to mean like quitting your job it just means like you start to research, you implement something, you make a phone call. For him, it was setting up a private practice while he was still working at the hospital, doing it on the side. And he did that, and he set it up, and he marketed it, and blah, blah, blah. And he got himself several clients, and then he completed with that, and he's like, you know what? That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I was like, fantastic. You figured that out in 8 weeks.
Oh, nice.
after 3 years of thinking about it, X that one off. Maybe come back to it later, but for now we're done. Great. Now we got these other paths. And so we got to start actively engaging in small ways with these changes to really start, because then you're meeting life and you'll start to get feedback. You get information. Doors open, or your energy gets higher or something. And then that's a sign like, oh yeah, let's keep going down that path.
Yeah. I love that. And what I want to make sure we point out is we're talking a lot about work and career and jobs and business and stuff like that, but changing who you are, shifting or evolving who you are will change everything. You can still be inauthentic in your marriage, and most people are. We know a lot of people that are inauthentic in their marriage. They show up as the husband, the provider, the father, or the wife, or the sister, or the whatever. But they're playing that role because they haven't identified who they actually are in the world for the world. Yeah. They've been given these titles by a piece of paper or the government or birth, and they roll like that. Regret will come from that too. So leveling you up, finding your authentic self, understanding your value or what you value in the world, those things are going to not only help your money, your career, your investments, they're going to help you in your relationships, your marriage, the relationship with yourself, your friends. They're going to help you with, literally all kinds of different areas of life. And it is crucial at this point that people start taking those little steps to finding who they want to be, who they are, their authenticity, their identity, like understanding not that they don't have to just constantly please people to be loved or to be liked. and start to shift the patterns, shift the environments. If you really want to live a life without regrets, you got to get into action right now. Just like you said, you have to get into action today. And everybody's going to be different. So maybe part of the challenge is figuring it out. But here's two people, myself and Dr. Aziz, that can guide as a resource, as an expert, and help you to discover the next thing that you should do on the path to discovery.
Yes.
Super simple. Just make another choice. Just make a choice that's different than the one that perpetuated all this shit from yesterday and a year ago and 5 years ago and 20 years ago. It's it. Life is just a series of those little choices. And that's all you have to do.
I love it, man. Well said.
Dude, thank you.
I'm in. Let's go.
All right. I think I want to have you back on, man. I think this is such a really, deep topic that, your expert level is super helpful and your message is super helpful for people. So tell everybody where they can find you, one, and tell everybody the names of your books so they can roll on Amazon or Audible right now and get them. And then you and I are going to have a conversation about you coming back on maybe in a couple months and talk about some deeper level things and some more application, and so that the people listening today can come back and go, all right, well, I took this action and now, Dr. Aziz, how do I get more of that and farther?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, man.
Cool.
So the best place, easiest place would be go to draziz.com, draziz.com. That will have all the stuff that I'm doing. You can get, you can find out about my YouTube channel there, which is free. My podcast, Shrink for the Shy Guy, also free. There's an ebook there that you can get for free, 5 Steps to Unleash Your Inner Confidence. So no excuse to not get started with just free stuff to start learning, start creating that new immersion environment. And of course, you want to take it further. We do online. Currently, they're online live events. 3-month program, a year-long program, immersion stuff that really is designed to transform. So that's the best place to start. The books you can find about on the website as well, but there's Not Nice is one I mentioned. That's really good for this whole conversation around niceness. On My Own Side, to get control of that voice in our head. I also have a book called The Art of Extraordinary Confidence, which really highlights how we go from sub-average confidence to ever-increasing levels of confidence in all areas of life. So a lot of great resources, and I encourage people to just stay immersed, because if you immerse and you act on what you learn, stuff changes. Changes fast.
Totally. Yeah, dude, this has been awesome. And I know like you literally hit the 5 E's that I promise every time. Elevate, educate, empower, enrich, and evolve. Like you got all of them today. You literally did that for this audience, and that makes me feel fulfilled. It makes you feel fulfilled, and now the audience is fulfilled, and everybody won today.
Fantastic, man. Yeah, dude, a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So everybody, thanks for listening to this episode. Remember, Dr. Aziz, draziz.com, or you can find everything in the show notes. All the stuff that Dr. Aziz said. If you're driving in your car, you're at the gym, and you don't have time to write it down, you can go to ianlobas.com or mentalpurposepodcast.com. Find all the information. Remember about our free Facebook community, all the resources, our front runner events. We've got so much cool stuff going on. So just be immersed in our world if you want, and get anything that you can get to evolve your life to whatever capacity you want. So Dr. Aziz, thanks, my friend. It's been a real honor.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks again for listening to the Men on Purpose podcast, where our mission is to educate, elevate, and activate every man to truly live their best, most fulfilling life possible. To find out more about the podcast, our guests, or becoming a man on purpose, visit menonpurposepodcast.com and choose your most purposeful path forward.